So we are in the position of the Sherfy House here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, along the Emmitsburg Road. And behind me, you see the monument to the 57th Pennsylvania Veteran Volunteers of the 1st Brigade, 1st Division, 3rd Corps. And we're going to talk a little bit about why they were here and what they did in this position on the afternoon of July the 2nd as they repelled Confederate attacks. On the monument here of the 57th Pennsylvania Veteran Volunteers, you can see it is written, the regiment occupied this position exposed to a heavy artillery fire on the afternoon of July the 2nd for 2 hours when it advanced 170 foot and engaged the enemy. So here in this area of what is known as the Peach Orchard today, or the battle for the Peach Orchard, were the men of this unit. And they advanced 170 foot past this monument to around somewhere in the rear of the Sherfy House there and started engaging the enemy. Well, we're going to talk about one soldier's account and what he wrote of his experiences in this position. So on the afternoon of July the 1st, 1863, the 57th was ordered to fall in, and they started marching along the Emmitsburg Road to get here to Gettysburg. Now, as they got close to Gettysburg, they started hearing the artillery fire and the fighting that was going on July the 1st on the north and west battlefield. So a guy by the name of E.C. Strauss wrote an account that I read that explains the men and what they did here on July the 1st and 2nd and 3rd of 1863. But we want to focus on what happened in this position on July the 2nd. And he writes that they left along the Emmitsburg Road on the 1st. They heard the battle raging as they got near and into town of the battle that was going on the first day's battlefield north and west of this position. On July the 2nd, they woke up, ate breakfast, got ready, and prepared for a battle they knew that would rage later on that day. They just didn't know when. That afternoon, they were ordered into line here along the Emmitsburg Road, and they took up positions right here around the Sherfy farm. And some of the men, according to his account, went up in the windows of this home and were firing on the advancing Confederates that were advancing in the field right behind me now. And if you look at the side of the Sherfy farm today, you can still see the bullet strike marks that he describes as the battle was raging. So we're at the back of the Sherfy house, and if you look, here's a close-up of some of the bullet holes and bullet strikes in the back of the home. And I'm not 100% sure if the wood is original or not. I'm not really seeing anything that sticks out. So you can still see the strikes on the home from muskets and artillery. And he wrote that artillery was coming through the roof. So he also wrote that one soldier took cover as this battle was raging around this farmhouse behind a cherry tree. And sometime during the fighting, that cherry tree was struck by a Union cannonball. One of their own guns struck that cherry tree, and the cannonball lodged itself inside of that cherry tree. And when he come back years later, that cannonball was still in that cherry tree. And if you want to see more about the tree that had the cannonball in it in this yard that he describes, visit JD at the History Underground here on YouTube. And you can find out a lot more information about that account. He has a great video on this Sherfy farm, and you could go visit it on his channel. So we have now sent ourselves to the Adams County Historical Society And we're making a little break in this video to show you the actual cannonball we have been talking about in this video. This is the actual cannonball, the Union cannonball, that struck the cherry tree that was written about by the soldier. And how cool is it to read the account and then see the artifact for yourself? So when I ran across Strauss's writings of the 57 and what happened here on July the 2nd, 1863, it piqued my interest and it got me really interested in the 57th. And I started digging more into it and reading more into that unit. And after this engagement, they ended up falling back. And eventually they fell all the way back to Cemetery Hill. And the men here really went through the ringer. Strauss also talked about one occurrence here that was not such a great one, and that concerned the Sheriffry barn behind me. During the battle, many of the wounded men were taken inside of this barn for refuge. Well, during the heat of the battle, the barn caught fire, and most of the men who were inside of this barn did not make it out. So they perished in that fire, if they wasn't already perished enough from the wounds. And this Sheriffry barn today that is reconstructed on this site remains kind of a memorial to those men. All right, so that's a little bit about the Sheriffy House. Just a quick little snippet of this location here in Gettysburg. And man, is it cool to see this place in person or what? So now we're going to continue our trek across the Gettysburg battlefield and take you to some sites, show you around, and make sure you join us for the next episode here on History Saver 1941. Until then, keep preserving history, stay safe, and keep preserving history.